Hansel and Gretel, Part 1. On the edge of a great forest there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. The little boy was called Hansel and the little girl Gretel. He was dirt poor, and once upon a time, when great hardship came upon the land, he found himself unable even to earn his daily bread. And one evening, when he was lying in bed, racking his brains and tossing and turning in worry, he sighed and said to his wife, "What will become of us? How can we feed our poor children when we don't have anything left for ourselves?" "You know what, mister?" his wife replied. "Tomorrow, good and early, we will take the children out into the forest, into the thickest part. We'll make a fire for them there and give them each one last bit of bread. Then we'll go to work and leave them there. They won't be able to find their way home, and we'll be rid of them." "Woman, no," the husband said. "I won't do that. How can I face myself if I leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals will soon come and rip them to pieces." "You fool," she said. "Then all 4 of us are bound to die of hunger. All you can do is trim boards for the coffins." And she gave him no peace until he gave in. "But I feel so bad for the poor children," said the husband. The 2 children had also been unable to sleep, out of hunger, and had heard what their stepmother said to their father. Gretel wept bitter tears and said to Hansel, "We're done for now." "Hush, Gretel," said Hansel. "Don't fuss, I'll fix it." And when the adults had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his smock, opened the lower half of the door, and crept out. And the moon was shining very brightly, and the white pebbles on the ground in front of the house shone like silver coins. Hansel bent down and put as many in the pocket of his smock as would go in. And he went back inside, said to Gretel, "Cheer up, dear little sister, and just relax and go to sleep. God will not abandon us," and lay down in his bed again. When day was breaking, even before the sun had risen, the wife was already there, waking the 2 children. "Get up, you lazy kids. We're going to go into the forest and get wood." Then she gave them each a bit of bread and said, "Here's something for noontime, but don't eat it up before then. You're not getting any more." Gretel put the bread under her pinafore because Hansel had the stones in his pocket. And then they set off all together into the forest. After they had walked a little way, Hansel stopped and looked back towards the house, and did it again, and again, and again. Their father said, "Hansel, why are you hanging back and looking over your shoulder? Pay attention and pick your feet up." "Oh, father," said Hansel, "I'm looking at my white kitten who's sitting up on the roof and waving to me." The wife said, "Fool, that's not your kitten, it's the morning sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel hadn't been looking back at the kitten, but rather each time throwing one of the shiny pebbles out of his pocket onto the path. When they had come to the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now collect wood, you kids. I want to start a fire so that you don't freeze." Hansel and Gretel heaped up brush into a small mountain. The brush was set on fire, and when the flames were burning good and high, the wife said, "Lie down by the fire now, kids, and have a rest. We're going into the forest to cut wood. When we're finished, we'll come back and get you." Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate the piece of bread. And because they could hear the blows of the woodcutter's axe, they believed their father was nearby. But it wasn't the axe. It was a branch that he had tied to a dead tree, and the wind was blowing it back and forth. And since they had been sitting there for so long, their eyes closed from tiredness, and they fell asleep. When they finally awoke, it was already the middle of the night. Gretel started to cry, saying, "How will we get out of the forest now?" But Hansel comforted her. "Just wait a little while until the moon has risen, then we will soon find our way." And when the full moon rose, Hansel then took his little sister by the hand and followed the pebbles, which gleamed like newly minted coins, and showed them the way. They walked all through the night, and at daybreak were back at their father's house. They knocked on the door, and when the wife opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, "You naughty kids, what were you doing sleeping in the forest for so long? We thought you were never going to come home." But their father was thrilled. because it had deeply troubled him that he had abandoned them like that. Not long after that, there was again want everywhere, and the children heard Mother saying to Father in their bed at night, "Everything's all mucked up again. We only have half a loaf of bread left. This is all she wrote. The kids have got to go. We'll take them deeper into the forest so that they can't find their way out again. Otherwise we haven't a hope." The husband was deeply troubled and thought to himself, "It would be better if you shared your last bite with your children." But the wife would listen to nothing he said, scolded him and hurled insults at him. In for a penny, in for a pound, and since he had given in the first time, he had to do so again. But the children were still awake and had listened in on the conversation. When the adults were asleep, Hansel again got up, meaning to go out and collect pebbles as before. But the wife had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. But he comforted his little sister, saying, "Don't cry, Gretel, just relax and sleep. God will help us already." Early in the morning the wife came and fetched the children out of bed. They received their bits of bread, which were, however, even smaller than the previous time. On the way into the forest, Hansel broke it up in his pocket, frequently coming to a halt and throwing a crumb on the ground. "Hansel, what are you doing, stopping and gazing around?" his father asked. "Come along." "I'm looking at my little dove. It's sitting on the roof waving to me," replied Hansel. "Fool," said the wife, "that's not your dove. It's the morning sun shining on the chimney." But one by one Hansel threw all the crumbs on the path. The woman led the children even deeper into the forest, where they had never before been in their lives. Then once more a big fire was made, and the mother said, "Just sit there and wait, you kids, and if you're tired you can sleep a bit. We're going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening when we're finished we'll come and get you." When noon came, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel, who had scattered his share on the ground. Then they fell asleep, and the evening wore on, but no one came for the poor children. They only woke up in the middle of the night, and Hansel comforted his little sister, saying, "Gretel, just wait till the moon rises. Then we'll see the breadcrumbs that I dropped. They'll show us the way home." When the moon came, they got up, but they found no breadcrumbs any more, for the many thousand birds that fly about in field and forest had pecked them all up. Hansel said to Gretel, "We'll soon find the path," but they did not find it. They walked all night and all through another day, from morning until evening, but they could not find their way out of the forest, and were so hungry, for they had nothing except the small number of berries that they found on the ground. And because they were so tired that their legs did not want to carry them any more, they lay down under a tree and fell asleep.